Incredible rescue. Cowboy's life-changing dig uncovers hidden mother and baby trapped for 12 hours. The heavens opened above the parched Texas plains, unleashing a torrent of rain that turned Jake's world upside down. Just when the townsfolk thought the drought would never relent, the skies darkened and a storm began to brew. For Jake, a 35-year-old cowboy burdened by his family's ranch struggles, every drop felt like a glimmer of hope and a harbinger of disaster all at once. He had awoken that morning with the usual weight on his shoulders, the weight of his family's legacy and the relentless survival of their ranch. Farming had become a battle in recent years, each day more challenging than the last. The storm hit suddenly, fierce and unforgiving, washing away more than just dust. It left chaos in its wake, uprooting trees and, in a heartbreaking twist of fate, burying a mother and her infant child in a car trapped beneath debris. Sirens wailed in the distance, but all eyes were on Jake as he stood, boots caked in mud, gripping a shovel like a lifeline. A hush fell over the crowd. The wealthier townsfolk eyed him warily, the doubt in their eyes sharper than a rattlesnake's teeth. After all, Jake's hands, calloused and weathered, held more than just the tools of a rancher. They held the weight of a lifelong struggle against those who always believed they were better. Get a move on. One voice cut through the tension, urgency rising like smoke in the air. It felt monumental, watching townsfolk shift restlessly, whispering amongst themselves. They couldn't see past his humble origins, but Jake could see through the storm's chaos. The heart of this town lay beneath the rubble, waiting for a hero, not one carved from wealth or status, but one forged from family bonds and hard work. He thought about his own son, laughter and light in his eyes, and the fear gripped his heart. He sprinted toward the wreckage, instinct guiding him. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake plunged his shovel into the earth, the deafening sound harmonizing with the rain pouring down. With every scrape of soil, memories of family barbecues and community dances resurfaced. Hope rose in the faces of his neighbors, anticipation twinkling in their weary eyes. As dirt flew, he felt something give beneath the weight. A metallic thud resonated through his bones. He clawed at the debris, desperation fueling him. The trapped vehicle revealed itself a battered car, its windows fogged with panic. Jake's heart raced, knowing the life within depended on him. Breaths quickened around him, tension bonding the crowd in shared purpose, casting skepticism aside. It wasn't just about saving the mother and child. It was a reckoning for Jake and a chance for the community to shift, to understand that grit knows no social boundaries. One last push, and he dug wildly until he uncovered the back seat, a clutching hand reaching through the shattered window. The mother's face was pale, and tears streamed down her cheeks as she cried out to her rescue. Jake could feel the world hold its breath as he called on the townsfolk, "Help me. We're almost there." The ground shifted ominously below them, and the air thick with fear took a turn. Could he save them all? Or would the very earth swallow their efforts? The answer hung like the storm above, a question poised for resolution. Hope and despair battled, and Jake, like a true cowboy, stood at the center of it all, ready to fight for a future that rested in the balance. The crowd surged forward as Jake's voice rang out, filled with raw urgency. Faces blurred in the rain, but he could feel their energy, their fear, their hope. Adrenaline coursed through his veins, driving him to dig deeper, to push harder. Each scoop of mud and debris revealed the weight of lives that hung in the balance. "Stay calm. We're gonna get you out," he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat as he saw the mother's terrified eyes above the broken glass. Her hand was still reaching, still hopeful, intertwined with the invisible threads of life that bound them all together in that moment. Behind him, townsfolk joined the effort, their skepticism crumbling with the earth as they lent their strength to Jake's battle. Come on, folks. Grab a shovel. We need everyone. Jake called, his voice rising above the roar of the rain, igniting a spark of communal spirit. The townspeople rallied, hands and hearts drawn into action. A flurry of movement erupted, and Jake felt the weight of doubt lift, replaced by a tidal wave of determination. As they worked, Jake couldn't help but glance back at the mother. Each time their eyes met, he saw a flicker of hope ignite in her expression, forcing him to dig even faster. With every shovel full of mud, he could sense the air thickening with unspoken prayers. Time was slipping away, and with it, their chance to save her and the tiny soul nestled next to her. Almost there, shouted one of the men beside him, his face caked with mud. Encouragement rippled through the group, fueling them with renewed vigor. But just as he felt the adrenaline turning into triumph, the ground around them trembled again, a reminder of the storm's fury. The air grew heavy with an unshakable dread as a deep crack echoed across the earth beneath their feet. "Jake, we gotta get back," came a voice from the crowd, fear etched in every syllable. The urgency of the storm was palpable, pressing against them, mingling with their unyielding resolve. "No!" Jake cried out, a fierce urgency surging within him. "We're too close." He didn't look away from the woman, the tiny hand he could barely see from his position. "Hold on! Hold on!" he yelled, pushing himself one last time, every muscle screaming in protest. Just then, he caught a glimpse of the child, the tiny bundle nestled in the mother's grasp. Salvation surged through his chest, spreading warmth through his veins. If they could only get to them quickly. With one last powerful thrust into the rubble, his hand connected with something soft. A small, fragile form. "Jake!" "No!" The warning came too late. The ground shuddered again, the earth crumbling beneath them. A fracture chased itself through the packed earth like a lightning bolt, and Jake could feel the pull of gravity urging him to turn back. But instinct propelled him forward. He couldn't leave them. Not now. "Help!" he bellowed as the earth beneath him threatened to cave in. The crowd gasped, the world around him seeming to slow. If he fell now, all hope would disappear. Jake had to act. With trembling fingers, he wrapped his hand around the child. The weight of life and loss wrapped around him like the storm itself. Could he bring them to safety? Or would darkness swallow them whole? He had fought to carve out a life for his family. But in this moment, he was fighting for 2 lives more. Could he be the hero they needed? The storm raged above them, an echo of tumultuous uncertainty. As he clawed against the chaos, one thought anchored him: they were worth it. Suddenly, debris shifted, and the world tilted. Holding tightly to the fragile life, Jake rose, but would the hand of fate spare them all? As the ground crumbled beneath him, the moment of truth loomed closer than ever. Would they all emerge unscathed, or would sacrifice be the price paid for hope? In a heartbeat, Jake felt the crack beneath him widen, pulling at the very fabric of their hope. The crowd gasped, their eyes wide with terror, watching as he clung to the baby. The mother's voice, raw and edged with pain, broke through the noise: "Please. Don't let go." The words struck him hard. He wouldn't let go. With every ounce of strength, he heaved up. The ground beneath him groaned and threatened to give way, but Jake's will wasn't just his own, it was the combined prayers and hopes of the people around him, resonating like a heartbeat in that chaotic moment. "Grab onto something," he shouted, feeling the uneven earth shift again beneath his feet. "We need more hands." From the periphery, he saw a group surge forward, their faces grim but determined. It was a response that fueled him. "That's it. We're doing this together," he yelled, a rallying cry igniting their purpose. Hands reached in a mix of familiar faces from the community, men and women he'd grown up with. Even those who had once doubted him were now locked in this singular mission, their fears drowned out by the rain and a fierce hope. "Come on. Pull." With a collective grunt, they began to lift as one, each person straining against the weight of mud and despair. Jake felt the tiny body in his grip. The baby was fragile, but still warm. Hope coiled around him like a lifeline. They could save them. They had to save them. The ground heaved again, and a loud crack echoed like thunder. One slip could undo everything. But Jake focused on the mother's face, desperate yet unyielding. It steadied him. Almost there. He shouted, urging everyone on as his muscles felt like they would tear apart. But they held true, fueled by a force greater than fear, a shared belief that they were on the cusp of a miracle. Just as the debris began to shift, revealing a glimmer of light through the layer of collapse, Jake heard a shout from behind him, "Get back! The ground is giving way!" Fear coursed through him, but he couldn't look away. Not now. Not when they were so close. He wrapped his arms tighter around the fragile bundle, cradling the baby as if cradling hope itself. With one final push, hands grasped his wrists and began to pull. He felt the ground slope beneath him, but then there it was. A glimpse of the mother's face breaking through. "Keep pulling!" he cried, and the tide of strength surged once more. As he inched closer, every heartbeat felt monumental. Just a few more seconds. The cries of the crowd echoed in his ears, a choir of encouragement driving him forward. With one last powerful heave, Jake emerged half-collapsed forward as hands seized them both, lifting them away from the precipice of despair. As they tumbled onto solid ground, gasps turned into sobs of relief. Jake, still clutching the baby, its tiny heart racing, looked back to see the mother's face, a mixture of disbelief and gratitude on her lips. "I've got them," he managed to say, breathless but alive, a desperate smile breaking through the mud caked on his skin. And then, as the storm began to ease its grip on the world, the crowd's cheers rose around them like a tidal wave, but the celebration was cut short by another rumble beneath their feet. The earth trembled ominously, hinting that their fight wasn't over yet. What lay ahead? Would the storm's final fury take more than they had bargained for? Jake's heart raced anew with the weight of uncertainty. Could they withstand another blow? The crowd's cheers quickly turned to frantic whispers, eyes darting to the dark clouds rolling overhead. The earth beneath them continued to shake, and as the air filled with tension, a realization hit Jake hard. They weren't safe yet. That he felt a tug on his sleeve. It was Emily, the neighbor's daughter, her small face marred with worry. "Is the baby okay?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The innocence in her eyes tugged at him. Jake glanced down at the baby, still safely cradled in his arms. The infant was asleep, even amidst the chaos, a tiny miracle in the throes of disaster. "Yeah, Emily. The baby's okay," he replied, although it felt more like a question than a statement. Then he turned to the mother, still in shock as she gazed at her child. The moment of reunion was bittersweet. He felt a wave of relief wash over him. They'd saved the child. But as the rumble beneath their feet grew louder, that relief began to morph into dread. "Get back! Everyone, back!" Jake shouted again, his voice slicing through the noise of the crowd. Adrenaline coursed through him, pumping urgency into his limbs. He didn't want to panic anyone, but the ground's growl promised more trouble. As people began to back away, Jake spotted Sheriff Collins pushing through the throng. "What's happening?" he barked, his eyes scanning the scene. Jake pointed at the ground, still cracking and creaking ominously. "We need to find a way to secure the area. It could collapse again." Sheriff Collins nodded, quickly rallying volunteers. "We need shovels, ropes, whatever you can find. Check the trucks, check the houses." His voice boomed, pulling people back into action, focused on survival. Despite the panic around him, Jake's gaze fell on the mother. She was gripping her child tightly, but her gaze wandered, lost. "Ma, are you hurt?" he asked, searching her face for any signs of distress. "No, just thank you," she breathed, her lips trembling. The gratitude in her eyes felt like a warm hug amidst the winter cold. Yet the shadows of fear still lingered. As Jake exchanged words of encouragement with her, a woman shouted from the back of the crowd, "We need a doctor. Someone check on the baby." Jake's heart sank. "No, it's too risky. We're going to have to," but before he could even finish, the ground quaked violently, throwing everyone off balance. People stumbled, screams erupted, and the air was thick with dust and chaos. Jake instinctively wrapped his arms tighter around the mother and baby, holding them as steady as possible. "Stay down," he shouted as he felt the earth begin to fracture around them. The scene erupted into motion, a wave of bodies rushing to safety, the panic taking over as people scrambled away from the growing fissures. Jake's instincts kicked in, and he realized he needed to find a more stable spot. He turned to the mother, gripping the tiny baby as tightly as he could. "Follow me," he shouted, leading them away from the instability. With every step, he felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. Time was running out, the crowd began to disperse, but his heart could only focus on the trio before him. There might be time for heroics, but right now, survival was all that mattered. As he guided them forward, Jake caught a glimpse of a crumbling structure nearby. "There. Over there. Try to get under the awning." But before they could reach it, another quake hit, more powerful this time, sending debris cascading down behind them. "Go!" he yelled, urgency pouring from every word. He glanced back to see how far the danger was creeping up. Then a new feeling washed over him. It was a mix of fear and determination. They couldn't be caught off guard. As they raced toward the shelter, a loud crash echoed, shaking the ground even more violently. "We're almost there," he called out, but deep down, he felt the weight of dread growing heavy. The storm was relentless, and so was fate. Would they find safety? Or had the worst yet to come? The answer lingered in the air, a question that loomed larger with each thunderous rumble. Jake's heart pounded as he led the mother and baby toward the awning. Each step felt like running against a tide of chaos, as if the earth itself wanted to consume them. The world around him was in a state of disarray, with frantic silhouettes dodging and weaving through the dust and debris. But all he could focus on was the warmth of the tiny body pressed against him. Another jolting quake rippled through the ground, almost knocking him off balance. The mother stumbled, and Jake instinctively reached out to steady her. "Come on. We can make it," he urged, pushing aside his own fear to be their anchor. Despite the terror thrumming in the air, the mother's eyes shone with determination. She tightened her grip on her child, her resolve igniting something within Jake. Together, they could withstand this storm. Just as they reached the awning, a deafening boom echoed from above. Panic consumed him. A large shard of the building broke free and plummeted toward them. "Duck!" he shouted, the word barely escaping his lips as he instinctively threw himself over the two of them. The impact resonated with a sickening thud, and dust choked the air. Jake's heart raced as he waited for the echo of destruction to fade. When he lifted himself, debris lay crumpled where they had just stood. They had been so close to disaster. He turned around, breathing heavily. Emily looked up at him, eyes wide, reflecting both fear and admiration. "You saved her," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not over yet," Jake reminded her, glancing back at the mother. Her face was pale but resolute. She nodded, and in that moment, he understood she would do anything to protect her child, just as he would do for them. A sudden urgency drove him to scan the surroundings. The once bustling street was now eerily silent, punctuated only by the distant sounds of sirens and the occasional creak of settling buildings. "We need to move," he urged, still clutching the baby closely. "Come on." Together, they stepped into the makeshift shelter. It was cramped, filled with makeshift barricades, but it felt like a fortress compared to the pandemonium outside. Jake took a moment to catch his breath, scanning the area. The crowd was scattering, and he spotted Sheriff Collins giving orders. He wanted to help, to be part of something bigger, but he also needed to keep this group safe. "Do you think they'll find more people trapped?" Emily's small voice interrupted his thoughts. So many people might need us, Jake replied, feeling a pang of responsibility wash over him. The town needed heroes, and right now, they were being thrust into that role. Just then, a muffled cry echoed from the other side of the walled shelter. Was someone else in need? Jake exchanged a meaningful look with the mother. They both understood what had to be done. We can't just stay here. We need to find out who that is, he said, determination hardening his resolve. He turned back to the crowd, his instincts kicking in once more. The community was fracturing, and while he felt an aching need to help, the weight of the baby pressed against him reminded him of his primary responsibility. The harsh reality was clear. He couldn't afford to lose focus. As they prepared to venture into the chaos, another quake rattled the ground below. Jake steadied himself, gripping the edge of the shelter. We're not done yet, he muttered, his heart pounding in rhythm with the tremors beneath his feet. What lay ahead? There were others out there, and they would either be champions or simply spectators to fate's cruel game. Would they be able to reach those in need before calamity struck again? The question hung in the air like a thick fog, swirling with uncertainty. Jake took a breath, shaking off the looming dread. We've got to go, he said, feeling the urgency tingle in his fingertips. He glanced back at the mother who held her baby tightly, her eyes filled with a steely resolve that mirrored his own. Any hint of fear had been replaced with determination. Stay close, Jake instructed, motioning for them to follow him into the growing chaos outside the shelter. As they stepped out, the remnants of the once thriving street weighed heavy on his heart. Shadows flitted past, but Jake's focus sharpened with every step he took. Help! The cry pierced through the rubble, sharper than any siren. It was plaintive, filled with desperation. That cry pulled at Jake's gut, urging him to move faster. Others hurried past, some blocking their ears, unwilling to confront the intensity of the situation. This way! He shouted, looking back to reassure the mother and Emily. The path led deeper into the ruins, and debris crunched underfoot like brittle bones. They maneuvered around jagged edges that poked from collapsed structures, Jake's heart racing not just with fear, but with a flicker of hope. Behind a shattered storefront, a woman's figure emerged, her cries echoing off the walls. There! Jake pointed. The woman sat pinned beneath a fallen beam, her face smeared with dirt and panic etched into every feature. Nearby lay another tiny, still figure, motionless. No, Jake's breath caught, his blood turning to ice. Is that? Emily gasped, her youthful voice almost drowned out by the relentless tremors. It has to be, a baby, Jake's voice wavered, but he drove the fear back. We can't leave them here. He stepped closer, feeling the weight of his own failure creeping in. We can't lift that beam alone. The mother shouted, panic threading through her voice. We're not strong enough. But Jake wouldn't give in to despair. We have to try. He glanced around for help and saw a few faces peering out from the distance, uncertain. His voice rose above the tremors, hey! We need a hand over here. Now! Slowly but surely, the wary onlookers began to approach. A man with broad shoulders stepped forward, his face dusted with sweat and determination. I'm with you, he said, joining Jake. Others followed, and they formed a small crew, linking hands with renewed purpose. Together, they pushed, strained, and lifted, the beam creaking in a way that made Jake's heart race. Would it give way? With one final, determined shove, the beam screeched as it shifted. The moment felt suspended in time. The world faded, and all that mattered was the desperate lives trapped in the rubble. There! Jake cried as the space opened just enough for the woman to wriggle free, holding her baby tightly in her arms. Relief mingled with anguish in her eyes as she gasped for breath, cradling the child protectively. Thank you. Thank you. The woman sobbed, her voice cracking. Jake stepped back, panting heavily, feeling both the adrenaline coursing through him and the weight of what they had just done. You're safe now, he assured her, though uncertainty clung to the air. But just then, another tremor rocked the ground beneath their feet, stronger than before. The small group braced themselves, confusion flashing in their eyes. "We need to get them out, now," he shouted, fear creeping in again. Jake turned to lead the way again, but the ground shook violently, creating a new wave of chaos. What was happening? As he maneuvered through the wreckage, a sinister crack echoed and filled him with dread. The walls around them seemed to shudder and ripple. Would they be safe at all, or was this just the beginning of greater horrors? With the baby and mother secure, they needed to make it back to safety before it was too late. Jake glanced over his shoulder, feeling the weight of their lives in his hands. He swallowed hard. They couldn't simply survive, they had to fight back. What other dangers lay ahead in the fractured world they were racing through? The air was thick with foreboding, and each step could mean the difference between hope and despair. The tremor subsided, but Jake's heart pounded as if it hadn't noticed. They had barely caught their breath when another distant wail broke through the heavy air. A man named Marcus, who had joined their makeshift team, exchanged worried glances with Jake. "That sounded close," he said, gripping the edge of a wounded wall for support. "I know," Jake replied, adrenaline still pumping. "We need to keep moving. Every second counts." The group pushed forward cautiously, straining their ears for any signs of life amid the oppressive silence of the ruins. With the mother clutching her baby closely, they began weaving their way through precariously leaning walls that looked ready to collapse at a moment's notice. Emily's small hand gripped Jake's. "What if another one gets trapped?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Jake knelt beside her, his eyes kind yet fierce. "That's why we keep going. We have to find them, Em." He drew in a breath, feeling the stirrings of hope alongside the pangs of fear. "We can't stop now." But as they crept further into the debris-strewn streets, Jake's thoughts spiraled. He wondered how many more lives were caught in this nightmare. Were there others, like the woman they had just saved, pinned and helpless? He pushed the thoughts away, directing his focus back to the task at hand. "Over here." A voice called out amidst the wreckage. It was a woman, desperately clawing at the rubble. Her limbs were exposed, blood seeping from a gash on her arm. "Help me. Please." Jake's heart sank. "We need to get her out," he said, urgency cracking in his voice. The team rushed toward her, guided by the fading light of the setting sun that peeked through the jagged concrete. "Hold on," Jake shouted as they reached her. He could see the fear in her eyes glimmering through the dirt and shock. "We're going to get you out." On 3 they counted off, ready to lift the stones trapping her. 1, 2, 3. With a combined heave, they pushed the rubble aside. It felt impossibly heavy, yet the thought of leaving her there lent them strength. The beam shifted reluctantly but finally rolled away. The woman gasped as they pulled her free, wrapping her arms around Jake in a frantic, desperate hug. Thank you," she cried. I thought I was going to die." "We won't let that happen," Jake assured her, but the gravity of his uncertainty loomed over them all. Marcus cleared his throat. "We need to get her out of here," he said, glancing behind them where the ground quivered ominously. "This place is still coming down." Jake nodded, leading the way, feeling the weight of 3 lives now riding on their shoulders. The more they uncovered in the ruins, the heavier his heart became. How many more were still lost? As they moved, they heard the unmistakable sound of a baby crying nearby. It was faint, almost swallowed by the sounds of crumbling debris. Jake's blood ran cold. Would they find another life, or was this merely a cruel echo of what they just escaped? "Did you hear that?" Emily's voice held a mix of fear and hope. "Yeah." Jake glanced over at the mother and baby they had saved. She nodded, her eyes wide with understanding, a bond forged through shared terror. "Let us go." They pressed on, driven by instinct and the relentless cries that echoed like a beacon in the wreckage, pulling them toward what lay ahead. Would they find another life to save, or was the cost of courage too high? Every decision felt monumental, every sound a potential last hope. The cries grew louder, sharp pinpricks of desperation piercing the stagnant air around them. Jake led the group forward, heart racing with each step. He could feel tension coiling tight in his chest as he cast quick glances to either side, scanning the devastation for the source of the sound. "Over here!" Marcus shouted, suddenly pointing towards a crumpled wall that leaned precariously. It looked like it could shift with the slightest touch. Jake's pulse quickened at the thought. The group hurried to the wall, their movements both frantic and careful. There was something instinctive in the way they placed their bodies, adjusting their weight to stabilize the weak structure. Emily squeezed Jake's hand harder as they approached. The baby's cries cut through the air again, a fragile call marking time like a ticking clock. Where is it coming from?" The woman they had just saved gasped, panic etching lines of stress across her face. "Let us find it," Jake urged, feeling a surge of protective energy. "We have to dig." Together, they began to pull away the loose debris, hands clawing into the dirt and rubble like desperate animals. Sweat dripped down Jake's face, mingling with the dust that coated his skin. Each clang of stone against stone echoed a rhythm of hope teetering on the brink of hopelessness. "Be careful," Marcus said as another rock slipped from their grasp, the ground beneath them trembling. It was as though the earth itself was warning them to stop as they inched closer to a small space at the bottom of the wall. More cries drifted toward them, sharp and decisive. There was unmistakable life trapped in the rubble. "There!" Emily pointed, her voice rising in excitement with a tremor of fear. Jake followed her finger to find a faint outline just beyond where the rubble piled high. He could see the tiny silhouette of a baby, a few feet away, wrapped in a torn fabric. Anguish twisted in his gut when he recognized that the crying came from the child. "Someone has to crawl through," Jake exclaimed, eyeing the narrowing space. "I'll do it," Marcus said, shifting forward without hesitation. "Just tell me what to do." "No." Jake shot back, grabbing Marcus's arm. "I don't want you to get stuck. I can squeeze in." Before Marcus could argue, Jake crouched low and began inching himself into the tight opening. The air felt heavy with despair, each second feeling like an eternity. The cries became more frantic. "Easy, buddy, hang on, we're coming," Jake called, his voice steady but every bit tremulous. As he squeezed forward, jagged edges scraped against his arms, but he pushed through. He could see the small child now, just a few frantic feet away. Marcus's voice rang out, "How is it? Can you reach them?" "Almost," Jake shouted, stretching his hand towards the infant. He could feel the heat radiating off the little body. Get it," Emily urged, her voice a mix of anxiety and yearning joining the echoes of wailing. With a final surge of effort, Jake reached the baby. He felt warm soft fabric and fragile limbs grasping for something to hold on to. He pulled the child close, cradling the tiny being against his body. When he turned back toward the opening, he couldn't help but feel more than relief. It was a fierce bond formed through shared peril. "Okay, I have them," Jake called out, joy threading through every word. The group worked urgently to clear the remaining debris, and Marcus's eyes were wide with hope as they pulled Jake, and the baby came tumbling forward into the safety of their arms. But it wasn't until he felt a shudder against his side that Jake noticed something else. Where's the mother? He turned back to the space he had just crawled from, panic igniting within him like a wildfire. "Jake!" Emily cried, but he was already scrambling back, heart racing once more. He couldn't leave anyone behind. Now the stakes felt even higher. Could they save another life? Or would they run out of time? The earth convulsed around them as they worked. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he squeezed back through the narrow crevice, his mind racing. The baby in his arms was now quiet, but that didn't ease his anxiety. He could still hear the faint echo of cries reverberating in his ears, reminding him of the mother's desperate situation. Please, Please, let her be okay, he whispered to himself, the words barely audible over the rumble of debris shifting in response. He couldn't shake the sense that time was slipping through his fingers like sand. The others were still reeling from the baby's miraculous extraction, faces painted with relief. But Jake didn't want to lose this momentum. We need to find her, he shouted, urgency lacing his voice. Right behind you, Marcus said, determination rising in his tone. They quickly began to focus on the debris pile again, their hands flying, moving boulders and slabs of concrete with a blend of fear and fierce resolve. Jake's eyes darted over the rubble. He imagined the mother's face, filled with worry and fear. What had she been through? How long had she been trapped? The image hammered through his thoughts like a relentless drumbeat. Over here, Emily called suddenly, pointing at another section where some stone had shifted. The group turned, breaking up into smaller teams to tackle the area she had indicated. With a deep breath, Jake dived into the work once more, his muscles straining but fueled by adrenaline. He grunted as he pushed aside a heavy piece of concrete, sweat pooling in his brow. The cries from the mother grew quieter now, desperation weighing heavily in the air. Jake! Look! Marcus shouted, his hands trembling as they revealed a small, bloodied hand beneath the rubble. It was only faintly visible, but it was enough to send Jake's heart into a frenzy. Is she? He stammered, fighting the click of fear against his chest. The little hand twitched, a flicker of life. Get more help. We need to apply pressure. Jake called out to Emily, his voice breaking. He didn't want to believe that they might have been too late. Hang on. Just hang on. Marcus yelled, determination flooding his words. The urgency spurred them on, their movements becoming frantic yet focused. Carefully, they cleared the last few pieces, and what lay before them shook Jake to his core. The mother, with dirt-streaked cheeks and heavy, haunted eyes, was wedged beneath the crumbled wall but alive. Her body trembled, both from shock and the aftermath of prolonged anguish. Mom! The voice of the rescued baby bubbled out, as if sensing her presence. The sight ignited an overwhelming surge of emotions. Relief washed over Jake like a tidal wave. He quickly shifted to kneel beside the mother, taking her hand in his with a gentle squeeze. We're here, he said, his voice earnest and steady. You're safe now. We're going to get you out. Her eyes flickered with relief but also struggled against pain. My baby, is my baby okay? She managed to choke out, her breath shaky. Jake swallowed hard, glancing back at the tiny child cradled in Emily's arms. Yes, yes. He's with us. You both will be okay. They worked in unison, dedicating every ounce of strength to free the mother. Hands trembling, muscles straining, they lifted debris that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Each second felt like an eternity as they finally created a space large enough. On 3, Marcus counted, adrenaline thumping in his chest. 1, 2, 3. With a final push, they pulled the mother free. She gasped for air, bright eyes locking onto her baby's. Tears exploded from her eyes, washing away the dust of despair. As she held her child close, the group stood together, caught in a moment of disbelief. They had done it. But as the shrill sound of sirens approached in the distance, Jake felt the tremor beneath his feet once more, and he realized that rescuing one life led to so many more challenges ahead. Can we get everyone out of here in time? He thought, glancing back at the gaping maw of rubble that still loomed over them. Suddenly, Jake felt the ground shake violently as the building shifted yet again. The sound echoed dreadfully in their ears. He couldn't shake the growing feeling that they weren't done yet. Stay close, Jake shouted, urging them toward a safer spot, uncertainty knotting in his stomach. What had they just awakened? As Jake led the group away from the crumbling wall, his heart raced with uncertainty. They had saved the mother and her baby, but the storm still raged, and the earth trembled beneath them like an angry beast. Until everyone was safe, their work would not be done. Everyone, listen up. Jake shouted, his voice cutting through the whispers of fear while his own heart pounded. We need to stick together. Move through the alleys. Find a safe spot away from all this rubble. Behind him, he could hear the mother weeping softly in relief, cradling her baby closely as they walked. The sight of them bonded, entwined by shared survival, ignited something fierce within him, something that reminded him this was more than just a rescue. It was a testament to the strength they all had inside them to face the storms of life, both literal and metaphorical. They zigzagged through the chaotic remnants of what had once been their town, a tapestry of memories now frayed and torn. The sounds of sirens drew closer, yet they felt distant, like echoes from another world. Jake could see the worries etched on the faces of those around him. Their town had been turned upside down, but the flicker of hope in their midst burned brightly. Look! Emily called out, pointing towards the community center barely standing amidst the ruins. We should go there. It's bigger. Jake nodded, feeling the swell of energy rise within the group. They moved toward the structure, a stubborn testament against nature's fury. As they approached it, shouts of encouragement rang out among those who had gathered. Each face they passed, gritty and determined, raw with emotion, added to a collective strength that fueled their advance. Jake felt a tug on his sleeve, turning to see the mother. "What is your name?" he asked, his tone gentle, wanting to know the story that came with those bright eyes filled with hope. "Callie," she said softly, her grip tightening around her child. "I can't thank you enough. You saved us." "Us all," he replied, not wanting her gratitude to rest solely on him. "This is a team effort." As they reached the community center, the crowd had thickened, and more hands were joined as they gathered in one place, united by such authentic strength. The building, though damaged, still stood strong, a haven amidst the hurricane of despair. Inside, people were poring over supplies and blankets, working quickly to ensure everyone had what they needed. Jake caught a glimpse of the sheriff barking orders, more people coming to help, more reasons to feel hope surge. "Help is on the way." Sheriff Collins boomed, his voice steadying the crowd's anxiety. "We're getting everyone checked out. If anyone's hurt, flag down a medic." Jake turned to Callie, who was watching her child sleep peacefully, a serene smile starting to bloom on her face. It was incredible to see that tiny spark of life sheltered amidst such chaos. Just as he was about to congratulate her, another quake shook the ground, more severe than before. "Stay put!" Jake yelled, instinct and urgency kicking in. The collective gasps from the crowd filled the room, but Jake held his ground, determined not to let fear grip them. The town would heal, just as he intended to heal himself, one fearless step at a time. With renewed focus, he said, "Let us make sure everyone is secure." More volunteers sprang into action, moving about like a well-worn machine. They pulled together, forming systems to move supplies, care for the injured, and provide comfort to those in shock. As the worried tension began to ease, an extraordinary moment arose when the townsfolk found each other again, sharing stories, laughter, and memories. In that moment, Jake realized this storm had given birth to a resilience they had never fully understood before. "We just need to keep it alive," he reminded himself. It was a revelation, that strength comes from within, from connection. Sometimes during the darkest storms, you find the brightest light inside your community. That night, as the last of the storm broke, the sounds of celebration and relief echoed through the town. They hadn't just survived the tempest, they were rising together. Streetlights flickered into life, illuminating the spirit of unity in defiance of chaos. As Jake stood with Emily, Callie, and her baby, he felt the warmth of belonging wrap around him, as if they were cocooned in a promise of hope and renewal. They had emerged reborn from the night, filled with scars and stories that would bond them for life, and as they looked ahead into the dawn of a new day, they would rebuild together, not only brick by brick, but heart by heart. Now was the moment for transformation. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the stories alive. Comment your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending below. And don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let's spread hope together.